Ah yes, warrior cats, or just cats in general. Who doesn't love them? But if you've ever spent countless hours staring in awe at other creators' wonderful works and wondered, how do I draw these little guys? You've come to the right place, because I'm about to throw many, many, many years of never leaving the Warriors fandom at you. I'd like to start by explaining that this is my very own personal style that's taken me well over 10 years to perfect, and that everyone's style will look different in the end. Don't be discouraged if your art doesn't look quite the way that you want it to. Mine never does. Everything is a learning curve, and my style is also, well, stylized, and it isn't really meant to look realistic. This video is going to be broken down into several sections, so if there's a specific thing that you're looking for, feel free to skip to whichever you need. We're going to dig into the different parts of drawing a cat just like a freshly baked lasagna, and by the time you're done eating it, you'll be full and happy knowing that you just added cat drawing to your new list of skills unlocked. And what a better way to practice rather than Firestar, the man himself! Stick around and I'll show you how to turn this into this. Step 1. Gathering resources. This first section is going to break down basic sketching. The first thing I like to do is pull up references of actual cats, and for this video specifically, I'm going to use examples of my real-life cats. Cats are the complete opposite of stiff. They like to bend and fold and scrunch, and they have essentially no bones. They are a melty pile of jello, so there's plenty of ways to play with your drawing. Spend some time looking at images of actual cats, if you have your own, just observe how they walk, run, play, sleep. Just look at all the funny shapes that they make. Okay, so one of the most dreaded things when I was still learning was hearing over and over, you need to learn to draw realistically before you can draw cartoony. Or you have to make it look natural if you want your art to look good. And I heard this in high school and even in my college classes. And as much as I used to loathe the thought, it did kind of help me in the long run. Studying the muscle groups and skeletal structure of what you're trying to draw, it really does help. So try doing some skull studies or attempt drawing a cat from the skeleton outwards. Or attempt to draw a cat skeleton from a bunch of different angles. Just get comfortable with the shape. Step 2, defining basic shapes. Every cat will look different. Some are big boys, some are itty bitty boys, but they all share relatively similar shapes. If you look at this picture of my cat standing sideways, you can start to see some of the shapes and then you can break it down from there. And from those shapes, you can create guidelines for the bones and the structure of your cat. We're going to pause really quick to state that when you're practicing, tracing over pictures of cats is completely okay. Sometimes when I can't get a grasp of how a cat is supposed to look, I will still trace over it. I know there's this really big stigma about tracing, but what did the original artists learn from other than mimicking nature and replicating exactly what they saw? Anyway, back to the tutorial. The head is sort of an oval shape regardless of which angle you draw them, and arms and legs can be broken down into half circles and little peats or triangles. For the structure of the body, you can kind of pinpoint where these shapes would connect to one another. Think of them as movable joints in the body. You place a circle where the joints are on the body that bend, such as the shoulder, the middle of the leg, and just above the paw. And then connect the lines between these, which mimic bones. So when you go to move these bones, the leg and the paw should always follow. The best way to explain this is kind of showing you with a rigged cat model from the side. Step 3. Sketching and posing. One thing I really wanted to do as a kid and a younger artist was dive into these really dramatic, dynamic, crazy poses that I had no idea how to actually do. So the drawings came out looking kind of funky, and this really discouraged me for the longest time. I only drew cats from one of two angles, front-facing or sideways. Like mentioned, a cat's skull is sort of an oval, and I like to start from the head down to get a good idea of where I want the body to go and let the rest of the sketch kind of flow from there. I start out with 3 basic circles, and then I place the joints and the bones mentioned on top of them. From there I can build up those shapes, and I pretty much have my sketch complete. The tail is the most fun part for me, and I like to draw them in sort of an S shape. Step 4 is defining your sketch. Now that you have a really rough outline, it's time to go in and fill out some of the more important details. And this is where your own personal style will start to take over as you explore some of the stylistic possibilities. I start with defining the face. I have a very specific style I like to do for faces, but I still follow the natural curves and shapes of a cat's real head. They aren't flat and one-dimensional, they have many curves and angles. And here's where you can add different facial expressions, eye shapes, ear angles, fluff all over the body, tail shape, etc. Make them big and make them chunky. Step 5, outlining your cat. Once you have all your cute little nubbins and squishy cheeks added, it's time to do an outline to solidify all that hard work you just did. The outlining part is pretty satisfying because you get to see your drawing come together in a single form. Brush choice is also completely up to you. And since this isn't an outlining tutorial, if you'd like to learn more about it, I recommend watching some of the several hundred other better tutorials out there that can explain it just a little bit more in detail than I can. I would like to cover just a little bit about the creases and the lines in your cat because it's something that's really prevalent in my style. Places where bones stick out, I tend to enhance and focus on a little bit more than normal. This gives dimension to an outline. For example, if a cat is sitting with its back towards us, we would see the shoulder blades protruding and the spine would be more defined, and the tail would fold where it touches the ground. These lines are just little details, but they can add a lot of depth to your character. Step 6, coloring and shading. So this is also going to be something that I'm not going to go too far into. I may make a more in-depth tutorial about fur patterns and the direction fur can flow and cat genetics, maybe in the future. This step is pretty self-explanatory. Just color it however you'd like. Cats have all sorts of colors and markings, so here's where you get to really bring your character to life and make them one of a kind. There's calicos, torties, tabbies, tuxedos, solids, and so many more cats. All of these fur patterns are really cool and I recommend looking into them. There are also so many different ways to color or paint on markings, so I would just play around with it until you find a style that's best suited for you. And there you have it, a completed Firestar. And that was the first section complete. Now on to more tips and tricks that I use to make my style unique and add variation to my cats. Step 7 is body size. Now that you have an idea of how to draw the cat, it's time to experiment with different shapes and sizes. Different body shapes give variation and uniqueness to your characters. Just like real cats, your cat characters can be completely different sizes. For example, take 2 of my Warriors OCs side by side, Stormrunner in comparison to Minnosplash. Stormrunner is this large, burly, long-haired tom with lots of muscles and a wide stance. In opposition, Minnosplash is small, petite, and has short, thin fur and lanky limbs. They wouldn't hold the same characteristics and would be read completely different if they looked the exact same. Size can make a huge difference. For example, an apprentice next to a warrior shouldn't be the exact same size. I recommend looking at a size chart and match the age of your character to it. You don't have to follow this guideline precisely, but it definitely helps. Step 8, body shape. It's an age-old trick that certain shapes give off different vibes and can control how the viewer reads your character. Shape language is used in most animated films, TV series, and cartoons out there. It can be broken down into 3 categories: circles, squares, and triangles. Circles mean happy, friendly, bubbly, innocent, and fun-loving. Not a thought behind those eyes. Squares are usually meant to represent strong, independent, heroic characters. And triangles don't always mean bad, but the sharp angles usually mean smart, cunning, or menacing, and make viewers think the character might have ulterior motives. It's also fun to combine these shapes. The breed of cat that you are referencing is also a deciding factor in body shape, which is what I go off of a lot of the time. The same 2 cats mentioned above, Storm and Minnow, are 2 very different breeds. Storm is based off of a Norwegian forest cat and Minnow is based off of a Russian blue. Norwegian forest cats structurally are far more square and large and bold shaped than Russian blues, which have more petite triangle-like features. Now compare those 2 to a standard domestic shorthair who is mostly made up of circles. Compared side by side, the 3 of them are very visually different. Another example is Poolstep, who is based on an oriental shorthair. He's super thin and lanky with narrow angles, mostly triangle shapes. Owlpatch is a Scottish fold. He's very chubby with a full round face, flat ears, and circle shapes. And Stonefrost is a Norwegian forest Maine Coon mix, with strong bold features and mostly square shapes. And if you'd like to see more examples of cat breed affecting how I draw them, just dig around in my toy house. Almost every character has an assigned breed to them. And step 9, the last thing I'll be covering is expressions. Who doesn't love a pretty kitty with a smile? Expressions are rather simple in terms of mimicry. I learned to do facial expressions for my cats by 1, studying the faces of other animated cats, such as in The Lion King, and other wonderful movies. 2, I practice with the commonly seen expression charts. I won't lie, expressions are still something that I struggle with, so I often default to the same few. but they're still fun to do regardless. I try to match eyebrows and eye shape to follow the emotion that I'm trying to portray. For example, a very happy cat would have bright, wide eyes and raised eyebrows, upturned ears, and a wide smile. In opposition, an angry cat would have squinty, narrow eyes, downturned eyebrows, flattened ears, nose crinkles, and a snarl or maybe a frown or just a blank expression. You can also look at human expressions and translate them to fit your kitties. And there you have it. Even though I'm sitting here making this tutorial, I fully believe that there are so many areas that I personally need to improve on. Each time I learn a new trick, I have sort of an adjustment period along with it. Just keep practicing with it and eventually you'll develop your own unique style. And your style is never done growing. I also believe that art styles are a crazy amalgamation of your own personal style and all the really cool inspiration you've seen over the years. And you might find your style even quicker than 10 years of drawing cats. Oh, and if you use this tutorial, I would love to see it. Knowing that I helped build or inspire somebody's art style makes those dreaded 10+ years worth it.